Welcome. I want to share a bit of my journey into feeling my anger, being with my anger, acknowledging my anger, even recognizing it. And I want to share that because it is such a root of what it is that I do with people, supporting them on finding a way of experiencing, feeling, and releasing anger and powerful emotion in different ways. And so this is a piece that I wrote about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, that is actually on my blog. And I wanted to share it here so that I could elaborate a little bit on it and see what comes up in this story, because it is so important to recognize your anger if you're not feeling it. And if you are feeling it, that there are ways to work through it in a very conscious, healthy way. First step is feeling it and then being with it, understanding the energy that's running behind it, and then releasing that energy and understanding what the nugget of wisdom that is behind the anger. Because anger is this discernment, a line or discernment of where whatever boundary lives inside of you. And it doesn't need to be more detailed than that. You're working with a boundary, and that anger is coming up because you've been crossing that boundary, and it is the line. And recognizing how to slow down, understand, take care of what it is that you need in those moments. And recognizing that no matter what your rationale says, that ignoring that part builds the emotion, builds the energy behind that signal. And that is anger. And at some point, you can push it down, push it away. At some point, it wants to be released. It is energy that wants to move. And there's part of you that wants acknowledgement and recognition. So here is a bit that I wrote that I want to share with you. I remember a time when I didn't realize how angry I was, or that I had so much of it stored up in my body. I had learned to rationalize it, allowing my boundaries to be crossed because I felt I understood the tough circumstances that created behavior in others, mostly my loved ones. I allowed myself to feel other emotions: sadness, emotional abandonment, occasionally sorry for myself, hurt that whatever it was happening, but never angry. No one could change the circumstances that I grew up in. Not one person was solely responsible. As a young adult, I was responsible for myself and had to get on with life. I understood that much. And I did. I just got on with it. So I had, just to stop there for a moment, I had learned to rationalize and take perspective. And emotion is not something that you can, pop out of yourself and understand circumstances, understand where everybody else lives within that, and then that the emotion just goes away. The emotion has energy behind it, and it needs to move somehow. So the emotion of anger and the emotion, powerful emotion, is not rationality. It is not something we can think ourselves through. So we can learn to take new perspectives. And that is a beautiful, beautiful tool and capacity that we can learn. But it is not enough. There's also the energy of that emotion that wants acknowledgement, the hurt from the circumstances even being there in the first place, no matter how much you can understand it, no matter how much I could understand it at the moment. I needed to learn that that was one part of the 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 journey, and the other part was me learning to recognize that I was angry, not escape into understanding the situation, understanding the emotions of everyone else, because that was an escape from really being with myself and my emotion and understanding and recognizing my own inner world of anger. And then taking another step to to deal with the energy of that emotion that lived inside of me. So to continue, I kept quiet, passive to my emotions. I didn't seem to feel them in the same way, so it didn't feel hard to me. I held space for others to vent or release or feel their emotions. I kept my voice so quiet, bearing my truth on how I was actually feeling behind this unconscious pattern that I didn't even know how affected I was myself. Sometimes emotions would release in drama states, but looking back, I didn't know what my truth actually was. I was detached from it. I repressed it. I cultivated friendships and relationships, repeating that same pattern. I made career choices based on that same pattern. This is what I had learned to do in my life. This is what had helped me survive. I became a coach, an NLP master. I learned all kinds of tools that helped me start the journey of unpacking, but it didn't quite get to the core, and it built up. So along that journey, I did things to try and find healing and try and understand what was actually happening, but it was so unconscious to me that I was avoiding myself by being so in tune with everybody else because that was my survival mode. That's what had helped and supported me with my family, and that's how I knew to make relationships work. People came to me with their issues, with their need for whatever it was, and I was able to listen and be present with somebody else, but not completely with myself, and not knowing how to ask for what I needed. So often feeling very lonely inside of relationships because I hadn't learned that skill. There was no space for it in my life up until that point. So it built up. I didn't know how much at first. It was my body that let me know, as it always had in the past, showing me where I was storing my truth, my fears, my sadness, and bottling things up. I had always been able to trust my body and work through what it was communicating to me at any given moment of my life. This time was no different. This time I learned it was about my anger. More specifically, my repressed anger. I had a year-long bladder infection, which started a mission and a journey on understanding what was behind the symptom. So luckily in my life, I've always kind of felt that the messages or signals that my body was giving me were not normal. So I didn't just accept whatever was happening. I didn't feel like, oh, this is I've got knee pain and I've got this chronic whatever, and therefore there's nothing I can do about it. So I try and find all different kinds of ways of understanding. And I found that working with my internal world had great help in healing. And it didn't mean that it took away all of the symptoms right away, but I was able to understand like what my body was showing me and where the weaknesses were at that moment, how things would kind of filter in and affect me in different ways. So growing up having a very sensitive belly and bowel issues, and learning that that was me just holding on to a certain pattern, not being able to release or really feel safe and digest all that was happening to me. And when I learned to tell my truth as well, then that shifted. And different intolerances, lactose intolerance, and finding a deeper communication. So it worked both ways, exploring what would work. I didn't, have a symptom like the bladder infection and know right away, oh, that must be my anger and that must be expressing anger. I've learned since then that it is about expressing anger, but that it was, really because that had surfaced inside of me. I never had a bladder infection before that year long. So it was so suppressed and there were so many other things happening that only when I became aware that I had this anger, that boom, bladder infection, and it wouldn't go away. No matter what I did, I would get it back, get it back, get it back until I learned to heal my body. First of all, with that, to accept it, and then take the steps to learn how to express it. And that was a whole long journey, because learning how to even recognize that you're angry and then say that you are angry and then express what was actually making you angry from where I came from. This was a huge journey for me because I didn't even really believe that I was angry. I understood what was happening, what happened in my childhood, what happened, I understood what was happening in the dynamic of where I came from. And so why be angry? And then I realized, oh, I'm angry. And then my body, had opened up to that awareness and boom, infection. And until I learned to, express and then really step into fully feeling anger and what it was, because you don't come from rationalizing it and then you feel it, and then you've got this mixture of feeling it and rationalizing it at the same time. And then when I really learned to step fully in to really feel what anger was, which is not rational whatsoever, really feel what the power of energy was behind it without spitting it out at somebody directly, and being that for that moment, then I could see the other side of it, if that makes sense. Then it didn't have the same kind of control over me, so I could understand the movement, but it was a step by step by step by step process. It took me some time. First you understand, and then you don't know what to do with it. And then, yeah, okay, I know that it's there now. And now it's like I've sunk back in to deal with a certain shadow part of myself that needs tending to. But how? Because I've never faced this part of myself again and before. And so it was a step by step by step journey. And only in retrospect can I see how many, layers existed within that journey, and how much I was avoiding it and completely unconscious about it. And that when my body surrendered to it, it just went and took my energy. And I had to, climb out of that physically, emotionally, soulfully, mentally, and understand where all of those boundaries lived after that. And I'm still learning. So I remember cycling home after having my first therapy session, and I had chosen this person because they were more of a holistic approach. And I cried the whole way back home, and I wrote him a letter when I got back home that was all about, I feel worse now, because he could see what was happening in my body, that I was just tight and resisting. And I used to talk like a newscaster. I was saying all of the facts, but I wasn't allowing myself to feel any of the facts and feel any of the emotion. So I was like a newscaster of my life. So in the weeks before, I knew I was angry, feeling exhausted and highly triggered. Who was this guy who made me feel worse than when I went in? I started seeing him in search to heal, because I knew I had boundary issues, that I was a highly sensitive person, and I wanted support on creating coping mechanisms to deal with the world. He triggered me to my core in the first 5 sessions I would have with him. I wrote him the longest, angriest email after that first time. And then I realized he did it. He unlocked my anger. He had triggered my anger inside of me that made me feel scared. I could feel it. I was angry. I was so angry. It was a strange mix of feeling relieved, excited, full anticipation, sadness for not knowing this part of me, and powerful anger. I knew that he helped start the journey. It shone a light to a new part of my self-awareness and exploration. But I needed deeper integration if I were to embrace, embody, and release from the body as well. I was hurting myself by not creating space to set boundaries. I wasn't living authentic to myself, that I could reproduce a story on demand. Words just flowed out of me like a newscaster, detached and so separate from my body or emotional being. I understood that it was me choosing it, and I had the power to change it. By saying yes to me, choosing my own life with clarity, even with all of the work I had done prior to that, I was still living in a mist, allowing myself to be molded by the surroundings I was attracting by not living from my center. And so, not recognizing that part, like I just started, I was still not completely living my truth and not also knowing how to. It was such a pivotal point. I remember the first time that I that I decided to share with my partner that I was angry. And it used to chill me to my core. I used to get into such a fear state. So I didn't know who I was if I was not that newscaster expressing from that place. And it slowly transformed to help me understand that I needed to create that safety around myself. I needed to learn to express myself in order to be able to feel the flow of energy. And first I had to step and embody that fear of showing what my actual truth was. And it was scary. It was so scary. My body was trembling. I felt like an ice cold core in my body. And I had given so much presence to other people that I had needed that same thing. So if somebody disengaged, even for a moment, I would freeze. I would freeze. And that would be it. It would be boom, 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 boom. I'd close right back up again. And that was the end. There was no more sharing. And so that cycle began to crack in that moment. And when I sat down with my partner the first time and I told him, like, it was literally me just saying, I am so angry. And that's it. This and this and this and this made me angry. And I would still say it like a newscaster. And then it progressed. Then I learned how to really feel and be with. But those were later steps. And now I look back on that moment as one that I cherish so much in my life. This switch of awareness that is felt inside, like a reset. The kind that brings even more courage and clarity. I knew I would start taking care of myself in a new way, and it took me to a new playground of self-discovery, a higher level of myself and of love, a new part of my life journey on how to learn to move this energy, find flow, and continually unpeel the layers. It was scary and raw and hard. I had to face myself, my shadows. I went so deep in my own pain. And I realized that when I allowed myself to feel what was there, it shifted, creating space for lightness and stillness within me, and an inner intuitive connection so powerful that it makes me grateful every day for every step in my life that brought me here, to the woman that I am now. And that is part of the journey. But the pivotal point that started me in gathering the tools that I share in my online Get It Out course, which takes you and walks you through 5 weeks of tools and practices and meditations to help you feel into and guide yourself through your powerful emotional world, and how to, learn to deal with it in a healthier way than stuffing them down, or getting so triggered that you're raging at those that you love or those that you don't love. Sometimes you get triggered into wow, or that you don't even know that you feel it. So all of those different aspects of yourself, and so I put them all into this online course, Get It Out, and I've been doing it live as well. And I've got, different weekends and courses in person as well to join in these beautiful containers where we explore that inner world together. And it walks you through, even if you skip something or that it brings up something uncomfortable, that you are not, that you take that as information, as you take that as feedback for how to start navigating this part of yourself in a different way. So it's not, to be strict on yourself or to find a regime of dealing with emotion. Emotion is not rational. It cannot be scheduled. But how you diffuse the anger, energy, can be fit into your life so that you can take away that edge, soften the edge, and really see with a lot more clarity what is actually underneath. What is the need? What is the desire? What is the boundary that's being crossed? What is actually happening? Because when you're charged, or you've escaped it or avoided it so much, you can't begin to see what that boundary is and what your body's actually trying to tell you, what you actually are trying to tell yourself. I hope that this was helpful for you in your own journey. I would love to support you and guide you through the 5-week online course. It is in your own time. There are emails that you will get throughout that will support you and give you information about how it works and extra practices that you can do to soften. And there's journaling, there's movement practices, there are visualizations, there's NLP mixed in there. There are reflections and questions to ask yourself. There's a lot. There's a lot. And it's a beautiful compilation of everything that I've learned so far. If you have any questions about it, please do not hesitate to contact me. I love to be able to share and support people on walking through this and really taking your body into consideration, because so many people that I know, and that's also what happened to me. This story was also me starting off going to therapy and talking about it, but it did not end that way, because what I was missing in my own journey was my body. And the emotion lives in your body. And so even when you get all of that insight and you start opening up and feeling, it is the body that is the key that will support you in really turning things around. And so I mixed all of that up. Work with that energy, work with opening and being with the discomfort that comes with working with your shadow energy, growing that capacity to be with your fears and that discomfort. Because I still have all of these emotions and fears, but they don't trigger me in the same way, because I've grown my capacity to like understand, okay, this is what's happening. What is it that I need? And I know how to give myself more and more and more what I need, but it doesn't mean that I don't catch myself off guard, or that life doesn't catch me off guard sometimes. But then I'm quicker and quicker and quicker at finding and regaining and coming back to my alignment and my center. And that gets faster and faster and faster the more of this work that I do on myself. And that's what I'm sharing with you. So if you're feeling it, go and try that out. It's on my website. I will add the link in the bio, in the text. If you have any other questions, or if you experience anger in a completely different way, I'd love to hear from you as well. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.